righty, we've got close to quorum. I guess we'll declare quorum. So happy Monday, everybody. Hope everybody's doing all right, at least as well as you can for this particular beginning of a work week. We've got a few things to talk about, so I'm going to go ahead and get started unless anybody has something they want to jump the line on. I'm happy to entertain that. Okay. All right. Reminder, Family and Friends Day is Friday and MLK Day is a week from today. So this is a 4-day work week for everyone. So please plan accordingly. Unless folks really want to have this meeting on Tuesday of next week, I'm going to cancel Monday's iteration of this particular call. If you've got strong objection to it, please put it in Slack in our static analysis channel. And the other one is something that was mentioned that was mentioned in last week's weekly, in that there's a brand new retro project that's been spun up for each of the projects that have been spun up for the individual groups. So there's a link to the static analysis retro project. There is a 13.8 issue that is already created and is available for feedback. And so we'll be using that going forward. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the retro. I'm reloading. So the way that I was planning to handle this is by looking for commentary that came from this group specifically. And then I'll be willing to, if y'all want to talk about anything beyond that, I'm happy to discuss that here while we're at it. So I see one that I would like to discuss in addition, but I'll bow to groupthink, and I am going to share screen so that we're all following along. There we hopefully go. So I only saw one bit of commentary from this team, and it's from Lucas. So Lucas, do you want to speak to what you wrote?
Yep. So this came up when testing the token revocation work, but testing in production is not the same as testing elsewhere. So there is some race conditions that we were experiencing with job executions. Namely, we had a service that relied on scanning the job reports to determine if there are tokens to be revoked, namely AWS ones, that relied on the report being stored. So if the report job that kicks off does not occur before the job scanning for tokens to be revoked, nothing gets revoked because the report doesn't exist. In theory, these things should be in-queued sequentially and execute sequentially. Sorry. But sometimes that doesn't happen because background jobs are fickle. So we don't really have an environment set up that actually mirrors that in production. In theory, staging would, but staging does not have production workloads. So in terms of like a high or load performance testing is kind of what it is, but not really. We could get better at having production-like testing and strategizing on how to do that.
I'm going to share my ignorance with a question, but I'll lead with my assumption and an assertion that desperately needs to be challenged. Scale and traffic affect latency. And so I get why this wouldn't be shown, why this particular behavior would not be shown in development, because there's just not inherent latency within local development environments. However, latency can be impacted by more than just scale. it can also be impacted, or excuse me, by traffic. It can also be impacted by the scaling of the environment itself. So would this have manifested itself if staging was comparably scaled to production in terms of workload? And hopefully that question makes sense. I'm trying to wordsmith it as I go.
I see you're unmuted, Sekad. Did you?
I think, I don't know whether we have a similar environment in QA. That may, so if we have similar environment, not similar, maybe less traffic, but if we have something like that, then it will be highly probable to regenerate the same situation there. Otherwise, in dev environment, it is hard to reproduce this kind of race condition and hard to debug. I don't know whether what kind of solution can we provide for this to mitigate this. Yeah, any thoughts? Yeah, first thing is this is very hard to track. Like I needed to take help from infrastructure team who has access to production log. We do not have we do not have access to production log. Actually, we have, sorry, not production log, the res console in production. So it's hard to see what's going on, how this race condition is like we are seeing this race condition in that case. Maybe proper logging, res log, may give us some idea, but yeah, it's hard to track and it's hard to reproduce the same thing in dev environment.
Yeah, I understand. I guess the crux of my question was if the root cause of the unexpected behavior in production was latency, is there ways to manufacture latency in a QA or a dev or a test environment?
Yeah, that is the question. But yeah, I don't know whether we have similar infrastructure to support that, to answer that question.
Okay. Any other commentary on this one?
I guess the only, I mean, we talked a bit about staging. The only other, and not offering any solutions here, but like stuff gets deployed to staging and then it's not on staging very long before it goes to production. So it gives us limited value in testing something on staging unless we, have it behind a feature flag so that it doesn't immediately roll the production live. That's all.
Yeah, and in this case, we do actually have a separate configuration, so it's possible to separate those two if we separated it correctly, which I think we did. But I guess that actually does remind me of something here, though, which is while there is a feature flag in place around the instance level configuration, I don't know if we have that strong of an understanding of the entire background job lifecycle of this part of the code base. Namely, after a build finish worker fires, it triggers this worker, which triggers this worker. And so you kind of have a chain of background jobs. Some of that is feature flagged behind the configuration, some of that is not. So I think that becomes more apparent on production than other environments, or rather latency as a function of high workload volume.
So in this case, our best attempt to resolve these issues is to make the code make the code as deterministic as possible, just by just looking at the code base or source code. Yeah, for now, that is the best we can do. Because whenever you create a sidekick job, all the sidekick jobs are asynchronous, and you cannot say that there's a chain of execution of there's no order of execution of sidekick jobs. uh, yeah, it's hard to see there.
Did you say as generic as possible or as deterministic as possible?
Deterministic.
Deterministic.
Deterministic means not yeah, synchronous. That, yeah, synchronous, like
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to make a call out, see, is there any, so hopefully everybody's had a chance to be in this issue. Is there anything folks would like to, any other items folks would like to discuss? Because that's the only bit of commentary that came from this team. All right, silence means nothing. So I will call out one item that I will reference in Slack and invite us to think about and potentially talk about in this issue and other issues to come. And this is the one from Mark about moving features to core can take longer than expected. This has taken time. It's taken a good bit of time, and this is really inviting us to start thinking about why. I have some opinions about what the problem is, but I'm not going to state them because I don't want to influence people's response or thinking about it just yet. So I would very much like for us to think about this because not only is it taking time to move things to core, but you can very much imagine a need for, or at least have had discussions about us needing to have a graduated experience, for lack of a better way of putting it, because there's a lot of, there are licenses between core and ultimate. So do we need to start thinking about exposing some features at premium or silver, and then even more up at ultimate, so that you get more and more as you pay more, as an example. So that's something that I see this as a recurrent topic for us in the near future. That was the only retro item that we had for 13.7, and I get it. I get why that we made the change, and it's also that we were in the midst of holiday time. So I'm going to make so hopefully we'll have more to discuss with 13.8, and we'll go from there. Anything else before we call out that close out that topic? All right, I'm moving on. I've got the next two numbers. So I'm on number 3. We own what we ship. This is something that has been merged in. And this is, there's been a few conversations that I've had in private related to this topic. And interestingly enough, there have been multiple people thinking about this that I think that appear to have come to the same conclusion. The way we are, and so my conclusions on this is that me taking on dependency updates, and I'm not talking about every single dependency that we have. I'm talking about the primary dependencies that we rely on, like spot bugs or security code scan or bandit and the like. Me taking that on as a maintenance chore on a monthly basis, which I'm happy to do, takes away the opportunity for everyone to get what it does is it sends a signal that you really don't have, that we as a team really don't have to care what the underlying tool does. and how the changes in behavior of the underlying tool don't mean anything to us. And we need to get out of that, get out of that particular pattern. And so that was the motivation behind this MR going into the handbook for us. The practical implications of this is that we as a group need to start having a deeper understanding and deeper expertise in what our tooling does and how updates to those and the changes of behavior in those underlying tools matter to the product that we are shipping. And not that we do this frequently, but there's been some instances that I don't remember I don't have exact instances in mind, but there are instances that come to mind of where that a question comes to us and we respond with, well, that's in the open source scanner, so that's not our problem. That's a cop out that we need if I were to put my finger directly on it, that we need to get out of, which means that we need to fully understand what these scanners do. That takes time. That takes a lot of effort, and it's not something that one person can do. And so what I'm looking to change is who's looking at our open source scanners, and also creating it so that people own our relationship as a group to those open source communities, so that we're becoming active participants in those open source communities, and contributing back to them, whether it is changes that we need or it is security vulnerabilities that we detect and they should patch, or it should be patched within those projects. And yes, security scanners have security vulnerabilities, which is interesting. And so what I'm looking to do is distribute out so that everybody is looking or owns a few scanners. We have 13. That doesn't divide evenly by 5 or by any number, since it's a prime number. However, what I was looking to do is reflect some of the natural patterns that we have as a group, in that we have a staff engineer that we all lean on quite heavily with questions, and making sure that that staff engineer is not overwhelmed with their own work, and it can remain a resource for everybody should you need the help. So that means 4 engineers times 3 equals 12. So I'm looking for people to volunteer to take on and be the directly responsible individual for updates and knowing what those scanners do for 3 open source projects. I am deliberately not saying how we do this. I am willing for it to be first come, first serve. I am willing for you to say, give me priority order. I want this one the most, I want this one next most, and I want this one the least, and I can dole it out. I can do it however y'all want to do it. So is there any questions about this particular change and how we can go about realizing it?
Do you want to verbalize, Taylor?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, this is just really exciting because we're about to start caring a lot more about vulnerability research and how that actually works, rules, how we detect various vulnerabilities. So to me, this is an opportunity for us to really kind of roll up our sleeves and see how other tools do this, so we can take those learnings into Vet and our proprietary engine. So I'm excited about this. In fact, this is a point later on about exploring vulnerability data, trying to see just what everything these tools are emitting is. And by the way, it's a mess, as you would think. So yeah, I'm excited. I think this is a great change for us and will give us much more hands-on control and experience with what the tools we're leveraging are doing.
Thanks. I was also thinking about it along the lines of vet, and like if we think ahead to vet, it would probably make sense to divide these up how we might divide up future vet work, because you're going to have a deeper understanding of it. Also think it might be good to have like you know, a primary and a secondary in case something comes up while you know, someone's out on vacation or something like that, so we're not spread too thin.
I hear you. We'll think about this for that. But at the risk of too tightly coupling this for future work, and we're still figuring out what future work looks like. Yes, this can inform how we go about vet front ends and the like, but let's speak specifically about what we have right now would be my request. I'm reading Zach's comments like liking the rank idea. So seeing that as the what came in first, everybody DM me your preference. I strongly recommend you send me 5, knowing that you're going to get assigned out to 3. Please do that because that gives backups. As far as what your preferences are, and I'm not sending any threats on this, but I will tell you a story from my younger brother who went to med school through the Air Force, and for him coming out of residency, he got the if you haven't done active duty military before, what happened was he was asked to stack rank 15 bases with hospitals where he would like to be assigned. He put in 5, and the Air Force took the liberty of filling in the other 10 for him and putting them at the top of the list. So, all right. So that's how he ended up in Alaska when he had his residency in Biloxi, Mississippi. And that was a little bit of a challenge in changing climate. Let me just put it that way. No threats, but please give me 5. If you would. All right, interest of time, I'm moving on. So I've got an MR that is currently being open, that is finally articulating in the handbook how we work within static analysis. It's trying to make clear specifically about what boards we are using, what purposes they are used for, and how we work through prioritization, assignment, and then moving through a Kanban workflow on those boards and making it deliberately is the wrong word, but making it abundantly clear how we approach planning issues, how that informs what swim lanes you work within, and how you can work to pull it through all the way from grooming through to through delivery. I'm asking for you to weigh in, give me your thoughts, commentary, and if you've got any additions, changes, or questions to please engage on that MR so that we can get this moved through and merged in. So this is my response to number 1, we're codifying exactly how we work here. Hopefully this shouldn't be a surprise. And 2, it's in response to we are dropping the secure overrides to product development flow. And 3rd, that there has been some changes to the company-wide workflow that's been articulated as well. So how we approach all of those changes. Any questions on that? All right, Lucas.
So I was just looking at the Fortino deprecations issue, which is linked there, and it's currently listed at 13.8. So this does cover the entire stage, but question for Taylor and Thomas, when should we expect our finalized list of what we're actually going to be deprecating?
Can we consider the list final? I like everything that's on it. It seems like a lot.
Something that we should add to that Lucas, which I can do that now, is the changing the secret detection jobs and consolidating them into one, like we talked about on that MR.
I guess my question is, what else do we need to determine if this list is final?
Probably priority order, because we have high ambitions for the first half of the year.
Okay, I can definitely take a stab at that. I think the one that I just don't have a good read on is the split of build and analyze. And I think that's partially because it's split between a couple groups.
I think that list is pretty lofty too. I don't know if I would consider those refined deprecations or just spitballed ideas right now. So I guess worst case, can we say we deprecate something and then change your minds?
I definitely think, yes, that is reasonable to do. I think the bigger thing is just we want to give people the appropriate notice. So even if it's not a refined list, as long as we have time to get it refined and get it to happen by 14.0, I have no problem doing advanced notifications. And in fact, we've pulled back deprecations in the past, so I'm not too worried about that.
For deprecations and removals that are really big, split, build, and analyze immediately comes to mind. Some of these are to resolve specific pain points, like with compilation, trying to do best effort compilation of projects. So spot bugs, security code scan, where we have repeated questions of, hey, this build pipeline failed, and we go pre-compilation strategy, or we get out of the business of trying to compile altogether. Should we proactively reduce the scope of our ambitions to only be where we are experiencing pain at the expense of consistency of approach? And that's a philosophical question, and I know it.
So I think that in a similar way, one of the things that is notably absent from that is consolidation of scanners or dropping scanners in favor of something like SEMGREP, which we aren't positioned to do yet, but I think there's a lot.
Okay.
Sorry.
Beware, Taylor just smiled.
This is on my list of things that I very much want to do. I think doing that before 14.0 is kind of like a wild idea. I don't think it's realistic, and I think there is still a very easy transition plan where we still have all of the original scanners. So I don't see it as like a critical do it by 14.0 thing. That's my like immediate reaction to it. But yes, you're right. That's a thing that's going to happen sooner than later.
So I guess to your question, Thomas, or your philosophical quandary, I think that split build phase is the only one that is that ephemeral. And I don't know if we want to play hot potato with composition analysis on who owns that, but I think that's a stretch, if anything. The other ones seem more straightforward.
I mean, to me, the bigger question becomes, if we are going to transition to SEMGREP for a lot of our analyzers, does the split of build and analyze become less important to us?
Depends on what we could remove.
Okay, I'm going to bring this up in the stage weekly as well as the product team meetings so that we can come to a conclusion on this. Thanks for bringing this up, Lucas. Anything else?
Taylor, you want to talk to your point 6?
Yeah, so I'll run through this real quick. So we now have vulnerability data in Sisense. It's very fun to play with. I was looking at it last night. I needed to pull a list of all of the types of vulnerabilities that we support, which is non-trivial and kind of just turned into me listing keywords from scrolling a list of 6,000 vulnerabilities. It is really fascinating to look through. There's a few examples of what I did, which was ranking by volume and severity. There's also an alphabetical one, which I used to try to group together similar vulnerabilities. It's just fascinating, I'll tell you, to scroll through the list of 6,000 to see if you know what things are. I enjoyed that last night at 11 o'clock. Maybe you will. If there are other things that you want to see, let me know and I can build out some charts. I am trying to figure out what vulnerability report type integers are. It's 1 through 7, and I don't know what those map to. I believe they're report types, and somewhere in the analytics code, I think those numbers are mapped somewhere. So if you recall that, let me know. And then I know we're at time. I can quickly run through the Forrester Wave stuff if y'all want, or we can punt that to next week. Up to y'all.
Are we going to have this meeting next week? I mean, should we do it now if we can? No. You're muted, Thomas.
Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? So anyway, why don't we do it quickly? I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and that way we can go through it.